Hi, everybody. This is Jason.
This is Pete.
And this is the Lost Legions podcast. And today, what are we going to talk about, Pete?
Legion Support Squad. Why did you laugh?
This is the third time that we've done this intro. And I think we should just start through it.
All right, okay. All right. Okay. Why?
Okay.
Oh, my
We're
God.
talking about Legion Support Squads.
Yeah. Okay. And how they can support you on the tabletop.
This is true. So, why don't we bring up the Legion Support Squad page?
Great idea. There we go. Excellent. So, Jay, Legion Support Squads. Do you want to give us a quick run through of what they're designed to do on the table?
Yeah. So, overall, I think that these are troop units. So, they fill a troop slot. The only problem is they're a support squad. So, they don't count as one of your needed, necessary, compulsory troops. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the only real problem around them. But what they do is add a little bit of extra firepower, usually close range firepower, to your units. And I think that, your mileage may vary now in 2.0. I think in 1.0 they were very useful. But let's get into the argument of what they do in 2.0 and if they're worth picking up.
Yeah. I think they're designed to be like sort of an engineer squad running alongside your main infantryman or something. I don't know, like blasting objectives, wrecking a tank, letting the guys move up. That kind of feel, would you say, or not? I don't know.
Yeah. No, very much.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that Pete and I, usually I'm the one who talks about fluffy things and he more talks about the rules, and we just kind of switched around our roles. He's like, do the fluff part, Mullins.
Today's fluff part. Today is backwards day.
It's totally backwards day.
Should we run through the gun options? Let's talk a little bit there. Yeah. So you've got,
and I think this is where you're going to get most of the variation and where you're going to get most of the uses out of them.
Yeah.
So go. Do you want to run us through the gun options?
Yeah. So we got there's six different gun options. They come with flamers as standard. Okay, they can be switched out for Volkite charges for free, and we'll go through a little bit more detail on these in a moment. Rotor cannons can be purchased at 5 points extra, Volkite calibers at 10 points, plasma guns at 10 points, or melter guns at 15 points. The squad must be equipped with the same gun. Only a sergeant can drop a gun for some other stuff, I think, if they've carried that across from 1.0. I think they have with certain weapons. So in terms of perhaps the sort of builds we'd be looking at, what's the sort of thing that jumps out at you first, CJ?
So, you have your anti-tank close support, sort of like anti-elite Terminator unit, which is going to be the Meltaguns. And I think that you're going to get the most use out of them, even though they're the most expensive. I mean, the problem is they're also 12-inch range. Yep. And they're relatively delicate if you talk about the game.
Yeah.
I mean, they only have one wound. They're T4 with 3-up armor save. What are you going to do? I mean, normally 10 of them is going to be a pretty big investment. So you're going to need to get them close so they could use their guns. I mean, but I've quite often in my old Alpha Legion force, I used 5 of these guys all the time. And I think that 5 Meltagunners still definitely has a good place now. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think perhaps putting them in a transport is key. A lot of these guns are very short range. With movement reactions now, the last thing you want to do is hop out, just be within melter range or something, and then that tank, reverses up to 6 and is outside of metal range or range altogether, right? You don't want that happening. Yeah. So you want to be getting you guys a lot closer than what you think you need to be to use metal range. Same for the plasma guys really as well. If you're going to be rocking plasma now with a change to the AP on plasma or how it works with the breaching rule now, as opposed to always being AP2, you definitely want to be getting those rapid fire shots off. So you're going to want to be within 12 inches of your opponent.
What do you think about the size for Plasma Squad? Because I almost think that, especially with the way Plasma is now, you're going to want 10 of these guys, as opposed to maybe 5 of the Meltaguns.
Yeah, I agree. I think 10's still got its place. I think Plasma's actually going to do a bit of a workaround in the next few months. I think we're going to see it. Yeah, I think so. I think breaching 4+ is worse than AP2 all the time.
Yeah.
But, you know, on certain units, like a squad of 10 Lees, for example, still going to get a number of decent wounds outright on average.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's good.
And I think it kind of depends on what you're running and what your Legion is. And I think almost more than like a lot of other squads, I think that this really changes around what I would take and who I would take it with. For example, like let's jump to the Rotocannon option. I don't think they're all that great unless you're like Imperial Fists or Night Lords.
Yeah.
And Imperial Fists, you're hitting on 2s, and that has Shell Shock, which means that when they take their pinning check, they're at -1. Well, Night Lords, same thing. 5 Night Lords with the Rotocannons, even 10 Night Lords with the Rotocannons, if they outnumber you, they're wounding on 4s instead of 5s, because they get +1 to wound. And it's probably nighttime, you're scared of them, and it's shell shock. So they could get up to -3 on your pinning check. So, like, but would I recommend Rotocannons as a viable, good option for a lot of other people? Not really. You know, maybe again, Thousand Suns could take them, and Thousand Suns could do their divination tricks to kind of give them the precision shot thing. But I mean, again, that I think would probably be better with plasma guns as well.
Well, they can take the is it Aether? Then what's the force? The force it is Aether, isn't it? They can take the plasma, the force plasma. Is Aether? I think it's Aether. So, you know, they have their own plasma guns, which go to strength 8, but rending 6+. You know, so, you know, on that, you're quite right. On the different legions, there's different guns that will shine. Like, why wouldn't you run plasma guns and try them regular and then try them with the force round options as well? You know, so I think you're right. Depending on the legion, depends on what you're taking. But I think there's two big issues with these guys that sort of stands out. Is they are support squads, as you've mentioned. So you're having to sacrifice. Actually, I think a lot of people will be thinking, it means I have to take 2 troop squads before I can take them. I look at it the other way around. You have to sacrifice a scoring unit option to take these guns. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas if
line is so important.
Yeah, exactly right. Whereas if you take 5 plasma cannon marines or 5 multi-melter marines instead, you've still got to a degree that threat. All right, you lack the mobility, but you've got your troops choices to still take a couple. You know, you can take 2 more tack squads instead of that for the points cost of that support squad.
This is where I said, like, this is why it kind of depends on what your army is and what legion you're playing, whether or not I'd recommend these guys. Because, like, some options will be better with some legions. And, like, let's say you have maxed out heavy support squads, and for some reason you want more melta-guns or something to do anti-tank, then maybe this would be an option for you, right? Like, but like you said, like, I think it just kind of depends on the makeup of your force. They're definitely not auto-include, which I kind of like about them. And they're very specialized, which again, I think is good for options. They're interesting. Like, for instance, I don't think the Volkite's a standout option, but that said, you used to play with your Raven Guard with the Volkite. Was it the Calibers?
Calibers, yeah.
And it was amazing. Like, it was like the sneakiest, best thing that I'd ever seen. I think you only played one 2.0 game with them, but the whole thing hasn't changed because they can infiltrate into the middle of the board. Well, you tell it.
Yeah, because with Raven Guard, you used to be able to, you infiltrate your squads everywhere, right? So it didn't matter that they were heavy 30-inch range guns. They would set up, somewhere in the middle-ish and just dominate the center and shoot out all game. But that was also when they weren't more points than a Volkite Culverin squad. So, there's a lot of change in the edition.
I mean, this is the thing.
I think
the
weapons...
they've gotten more expensive then.
I think the Volkite Caliber genuinely has no place in the game at all. for 10 points more than a charger is crazy, considering you can't move and shoot this weapon reliably, which is what this squad wants to be doing. I'd actually like to see it dropped. It's not going to happen, but I'd like to see it dropped and grenade launchers be brought in for a 5-point upgrade, perhaps over a flamer or something. Yeah. Give you a bit more of a flexibility. The guns just don't really set the world alight. They're not that interesting. But yeah, it really comes down to, are you going to do plasmas or melters?
Chargers are pretty interesting, but like
chargers are great, but you can get combi Volkites on vets now, can't you?
Yeah, and I think you can actually take Volkites on breachers, can't you? Or is that just...
Yes, you can. No, Volkite chargers can be changed out. Yeah, exactly. So if you want chargers, there's better units for it.
Yeah, they're just so much cooler on the breachers, right? Because then they have the shield and like...
Yeah. And if you take them on vets, you can fire the bolter as well as the Volkite every turn because of the combi rule, right?
Yeah. So really you're looking at plasma guns, melta guns, or maybe rota cannon.
Yeah, I think so.
Depending on who you are, right? Like, and you probably could get value out of the rota cannons anyway. I'd argue there would be better options, but like, yeah. I mean, let's talk about the other options, and we don't have to like belabor this too much. But like, what about the sergeant? Would you upgrade him? I never have. So I don't know what you would do.
No, I don't feel there's much point if they're going to be just trying to shoot stuff, especially if it's a plasma gun squad. You're not going to be charging because of the rapid fire rule. So, you're probably going to be wasting points on upgrading them. The only thing you might do is artificer armor just to make that squad a bit more tougher for when you want to tank some small arms fire.
I always just found they were so dangerous, like relatively dangerous, that they would be a high value target.
Yeah.
So they would get shot. So it was like spending too many points on them would be a little pointless. I mean, but I always took them with my Alpha Legion, right? And this is 1.0. So I would infiltrate them in, like just like Raven Guard now. So ignore this unless you have infiltrate. But like, it's like 5 guys with melta guns. And I think 5 guys with melta guns is still just as good. But like you were talking about before, you're either going to need to be able to infiltrate them, which some people can. You can with some special characters. Or you're going to need to put them in a rhino to get them up the board to make them do something. Or outflank. If you have an outflank option, actually, or a deep strike option, these guys... Sorry, I guess this is something we should talk about, too. Again, if you have a way of delivering them. So if you're doing drop pod assault, I guess things change.
Yeah.
If you're doing an outflank where they can reach these tanks, this thing changes. At that point, like, I think 5 of them for melta guns, again, becomes super, 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 super viable.
Yes.
Especially, I would take multiple squads of 5 instead of squads of 10 of the melta gun, right? Because 5 melta guns, if you can't kill that vehicle, then you just roll so bad.
Yeah. I think giving them the best way to make them more relevant, realistically, is just give them line, and you'll see them being used. Still keep the support squad rule, but just give them line. Because
so they can take,
so you still have to take your tax squads or your breach squads or whatever to unlock them. You can't just take 2 rotor cannon squads and be like, cool, that's 2 troops done onto all the dreadnoughts or whatever. But that would, make them... I just feel that they're a little bit irrelevant. I don't want to be too negative on them because, it's cool. Like, who doesn't want to look at, 10 flamer guys or whatever?
No, I think that what we kind of have arrived at, though, is that they definitely, especially in 2.0, need some sort of delivery system. And whether that be outflank, dropping, or
termites,
a rhino to get them up the board, or infiltrate, all of those options are kind of fairly viable because most of these are close range, except for maybe the rota cannons. And again, I honestly don't think that's a great option unless you're Imperial Fists and or Night Lords. And to be honest with you, if you're Imperial Fists, you can take assault cannons. So why the hell are you taking rota cannons?
Yeah. And also, I think you're right. I think the when you look at them generically, they're a bit dull. But when you look at them from a Legion-specific point of view, they become more interesting. So, the Salamanders have their Dragon's Breath Flamers. So all of a sudden, their Flamers gain +1 strength, AP4, better on Overwatch and Snapfire. Death Guard gain the Chem Flamers, right?
So at that point, they might have places for support.
Exactly, right?
Dragonblade Flamers. And again, but I think, again, like our delivery system comment
definitely
also sort of holds.
They're all short-range weapons, right? They all need to be up in your face. Yeah, exactly.
So you need some sort of either delivery system as in form of a tank or some sort of ability like outflank, deep strike, something like that.
Yeah,
in
or
order
as a speed bump, perhaps. But exactly. You know, I think there's options. I think there are certain builds with certain legions that are good. I mean, look at the Iron Hands, Graviton shredders that they get access to in a certain Rite of War, or just the Graviton guns they can take. You know, all of a sudden they become, you know, quite cool for area denial and whatnot. You know, there's lots of different things you can look at, but a lot of it comes from the Legion flavor in particular.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's interesting. Actually, so as we've talked this through, my opinion has kind of changed about them. And they're not an auto take, but they're not a bad choice. It's just that, like, they're not for every list. So you're going to have to figure out how to use them. And sometimes they're going to be a great option. And sometimes they're going to be a terrible option. So I guess that's just the kind of way you have to think through how you're going to use them. And like Pete said, I think their biggest weakness is the fact they're not scoring, and then not that they're a support squad, is that they're not scoring. And I think you're right about that, because I think they're scoring, you'd get a lot more flexibility out of them.
Oh, you can picture, can't you, like, you know, 10 flamer guys running up, torching attack squad on objective, killing like 3 or 4 of them, charging in, punching another 2, making them run, and like, we took this, we got it, it's ours. And it's like, you did that because you had your flamers. You wouldn't have been able to do that if it was a bolt squad. You know, a standard bolt squad. So you'd have more like engaging ways for line to work, perhaps. Yeah. But
I mean, I think this is good. We do have a video about line as well, so we should follow up on that and talk more about that.
Yeah, I think so. Cool. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it for now. I think it's a pretty good discussion. I hope you guys like it. And if you have any comments or how you feel about support squads, if you feel like we've missed anything, if you feel like we were completely right and you want to give us tons of praise, leave a comment. Like.
Yeah, be sure to like the video, give us a subscribe if you're not already. Be great to have you on board. And go check out the Patreon as well. And check out what we're doing on there. Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Oh, and check out our Despoiler video.
Oh, yeah. Link here. Link on next page.
Here.